Our world has never been more interconnected, and with about 100,000 flights a day moving people from continent to continent, it's easier than ever for things like diseases to spread. During the Black Plague, the most hard-hit areas of Europe were the busy urban centers, full of residents intermingling with visitors from strange lands, while the rural parts of Europe were relatively safe from pandemic. In today's world, however, not even the most rural areas of our world are safe anymore should a global pandemic hit. And if that pandemic happens to be a zombie apocalypse, it's safe to say that no one, anywhere, is safe anymore. Hello and welcome to another challenge episode of the Infographics Show. Today we're going to show you how to survive a zombie apocalypse. Deep in the jungles of South America, a scientist is studying a family of fungi from the genus Ophicordyceps, known as the zombie ant fungi. These fungi infect the brains of ants and hijack their nervous system to force them to climb up higher in vegetation. Once sufficiently high up, the ant dies and spores bust out of the zombified ant to rain down on its brethren below, therefore continuing its life cycle. It's a terrifying prospect, and as the scientist turns in for the night, he feels a bit ill. The next day his symptoms become worse, and he's flown back to the US for a treatment at a hospital. Whatever is making the scientist ill is progressing rapidly, shutting down the parts of his brain responsible for higher thinking. Days later, the scientist is under careful observation as he's become prone to mindless, violent rages, and suddenly he pulls against his restraints in yet another attack of the uncontrollable fury. Deep inside the scientist's brain are Ophicordyceps spores. While mammals are typically immune to the fungus, a freak evolutionary glitch has caused the fungus to attack human brain cells in the same way it attacks the nervous system of an ant. The zombie spores have overridden many of the brain's higher functions, including the natural inhibition our brains place on our muscles so that we don't overstrain ourselves. With a savage roar, the scientist tears free of his restraints, his strength magnified by his brain's inability to regulate his muscles against overexertion and self-harm. The security staff immediately leap onto the enraged scientist, but as more and more personnel pile onto the unnaturally strong and aggressive scientist, a small packet of spores that have grown just under his skin suddenly burst, releasing Ophicordyceps spores into the air. With a groan, the scientist dies, and the security staff coughs involuntarily as they're enveloped by the cloud of spores. Sound far-fetched? It is, but what's important to remember is that far-fetched doesn't mean impossible in nature. Evolution is a process that's fueled by random mutation and genetic mistakes, which in time leads species down divergent paths. The previous scenario may be far-fetched indeed, but you should be aware that it's by no means impossible that a fungus which previously relied on ants to propagate itself could one day via random mutation attack human brains. So let's say that we've lost the evolutionary lottery and a deadly fungus which zombifies its victims has adapted to infect human brains. How in the world are you going to survive it? First, you're going to have to establish some priorities and split them up into near-term survival and long-term survival. We'll start with everything you need for near-term survival first. Your immediate concern is obviously going to be to get to a safe area. This means leaving city centers. For the first time in human history, more people live in urban centers than in rural areas, and this has led to the greatest change in human condition since the advent of agriculture. We're now having to learn how to live together in giant melting pots of different ideas, creeds, and races, and cooperate for the common good. While previously you could live in a small town with few foreigners and even fewer people who thought differently than you, nowadays most of us wake up in bustling cities full of millions of people who could be nothing like us. As our recent history has shown, this has been a bit of a challenging situation for us to adapt to as a species. Today, that melting pot of humanity is your worst nightmare because every city is going to turn into a giant zombie buffet, and your highest priority is to avoid being the main course. The first thing you'll need to do is to identify an escape route out of your city and gather a basic survival kit that you can carry on your back. Taking a car is likely not going to get you very far as traffic backs up in the mad rush out of the cities, so be sure to travel light enough that you can ditch your vehicle and proceed on foot if you have to. In your survival kit, you're going to want non-perishable food items, enough for at least a week. You're going to be scavenging for the first few months, and luckily our consumer culture leaves plenty of great scavenging options for the average person. Also to your advantage is the fact that the number of people still alive is going to drop pretty precipitously in the first week of the zombie apocalypse, so sharing will quickly become less and less of an issue. Things like canned foods are great items to be picking up, as are pasta that can be made with some boiling water over a campfire. Don't overlook your basic dietary needs though, and be sure to grab nuts if you can as well. Your diet is going to become very nutritionally deficient, and nuts are full of vitamins and minerals that you might be lacking if all you do is load up on Chef Boyardee cans. Picking up a few cases of multivitamins is a good idea too. With our modern diets, multivitamins are largely useless placebos for most people, a fact that the nutritional supplement companies literally bank on. But with your diet becoming severely restricted in the coming weeks, you'll actually be in need of a nutritional boost. If you can get them, then by far the best food items to get your hands on are going to be military MREs, or meal ready to eat. These meals are specifically designed to cover the nutritional needs of an adult human engaged in very strenuous physical exercise. Jam-packed with vitamins, minerals, and calories, MREs are the perfect survival meal, and over the years have even become somewhat palatable. Along with food, you're going to want to make sure you carry with you a few gallons of water, refilling every chance you get. In most places, bottled water shouldn't be difficult to find, and depending on what type of energy your city uses, you might even have tap water available for a few weeks to months. Areas serviced by nuclear power plants, for example, could expect to still have power available for months, possibly even years, barring any natural disasters. You're also going to want to make sure you can get clean drinking water from the environment though, and a trip to any military surplus store is bound to fetch you plenty of options from sanitizing pills to straws with filters built in. Worst comes to worst though, you can always make a homemade filter using rocks, sand, and some charcoal. Simply cut a hole at the bottom of a plastic bag, then stack in the following layers at the bottom of the bag: rocks, sand, charcoal, sand, rocks. The water will filter through the layers of rock, sand, and charcoal and come out relatively clean through the bottom hole. It's not perfect though, so be smart about where you get your water from. Avoid stagnant or still water at all costs. Odds are though that your delicate little first world digestive tract is gonna take time to adjust to not drinking fluoridated and filtered city tap water, so expect to get sick and to get sick often. Diarrhea will be a constant threat, so be sure you continue hydrating yourself. Diarrhea can be surprisingly lethal in survival situations, simply because it voids the body of great quantities of water. Remember, you can live for weeks without food, but only about 3 days without water. Next, you're going to want to think about self-defense. But don't go running to your local gun store just yet. In a zombie apocalypse, do you really think that you're going to be the only person to get that brilliant idea? Best to avoid gun stores full of angry and scared looters, and instead, for the time being, grab something at hand from around the house. A baseball bat will do, along with a good stout kitchen knife for getting up close and personal. Eventually, you're going to want to get your hands on some firearms, of course, but wait until you come across one in your travels in a more rural area, or simply loot one from the dead. Rushing off to your local gun store at the first sign of trouble is only going to be a great way to get your head blown off by the gun store owner, or any of the hundreds of people who all had the same idea you did. Once you're able to get your hands on a firearm though, carefully consider exactly what type of weapon you want to carry with you. You're going to be traveling on foot, and firearms along with their associated ammunition can really weigh you down. So forget any video game fantasies of carrying an arsenal of weapons on your back. You're going to want the right tools for the job, or at least to match your environment. Always try and keep a handgun on your person at all times as a backup weapon. 9mm sidearms are easy to use, have low recoil, and are perfect for both gun newbies and experienced shooters. If you find yourself in an urban environment, arm yourself with a good 12-gauge shotgun. Its low spread makes it effective at moderate distances and doesn't require much accurate shooting to put a target down. Its incredible stopping power will ensure any charging zombies are neutralized in one blast, something which will be vital if you're fighting in close quarters against one or more hostile zombies. If you find yourself in wide open spaces such as the wilderness though, you're largely going to want to avoid a fight. But when it comes for you, you're going to want long-range accuracy, so you can drop any approaching zombies long before they get to you. A standard .308 hunting rifle is a good choice, and one of the most popular cartridges in America. You're bound to come across plenty of ammo and replacement rifles if need be. You might be thinking to yourself that the more firepower the better, and generally this is tough to argue against. But remember, the zombies outnumber you by a lot. You're not going to want to be doing much fighting and want to instead stay light on your feet. Also, despite what Hollywood would have you believe, headshots are not vital to stopping a zombie in its tracks. If you shatter a zombie's spine with a well-placed 9mm round, that zombie is going to crumple like a sack of sad pancakes. Undead or not, everything that walks, runs, or crawls relies on a skeletal system to support itself. A zombie that can't stand up is just as good as a zombie that's dead. So you've got your food, some self-defense tools, and water taken care of. Now it's time to start thinking about long-term survival. As you flee the city, it'd be a good idea to identify, if possible, any federal emergency response zones. These are areas specifically designated by the federal government as response zones for staging any rescue or disaster relief efforts, and are typically located in geologically stable mass transportation hubs near major cities. If you live in Los Angeles, your nearest FER is going to be the Bob Hope Airport in Burbank, though for most other places around the country, they tend to be at or near military bases. One of these safe areas is going to be a great place to make your first pit stop to, as there will be military and federal personnel there that can offer temporary safety and supplies. However, beware the growing numbers of people who are going to be attracted to these beacons of safety, because not only are they going to be attracting an even greater number of hungry zombies, but they'll quickly overwhelm and exhaust all available supplies. You want to make sure you get there first, get some critical survival supplies, and then make your way to safety elsewhere. But where exactly do you go when the world is under zombie attack? That's actually pretty simple, and it boggles our minds here at the Infographics show how no television shows, movies, or comic books have ever figured it out. Just go north, as far north as you possibly can get. But why north? Well, here's where we have an experiment for you. Go ahead and buy a fresh steak from your local supermarket, then bring it home and pop it into the freezer for an hour. After that hour is up, we want you to take that steak out of the freezer and try to bend it. We think some of you see where we're going with this already. Exposed flesh does very poorly in bitterly cold temperatures, and dead frozen flesh is not going to be doing much of anything, except freezing solid. As soon as the first snowfall hits, zombies trying to follow survivors up north into the cold weather are going to start becoming immobilized popsicles. And then, survival becomes a simpler matter of not freezing to death yourself. No need to fear zombies who literally can't move anywhere. We wonder how short The Walking Dead would have been if all the characters had just moved to Montana. Once the zombies are frozen stiff, it's simply a matter of waiting until springtime. If you've ever seen what happens to rotten meat after a long time, then you know that dead meat plus moisture typically leads to a mushy, smelly mess. But what if the zombies are not undead but still alive, like in our opening scenario? Well, in that case, all you really have to do is spend a few years up north, where zombies who aren't smart enough to put on parkas are going to freeze to death. In time, you'll be able to lead humanity back into the warmer climates to reclaim civilization for the survivors. But don't expect some epic showdown against hordes of zombies. Fact is, most zombies will be dead long before you mount any sizable resistance, and the killers will be wild animals. When you think about it, humans are terribly designed for battling it out with wild animals. We don't have claws or sharp teeth, and we're not particularly strong or fast. In fact, we're really only a threat versus ourselves. Over time, wild animals such as wolves, coyotes, bears, cougars, and the like are going to gorge themselves on all the walking meat, which won't be able to do much to protect itself from an animal attack. Zombies, like primitive humans, are going to be sitting smack dab at the bottom of the food chain. So in truth, a zombie apocalypse would probably be better known as revenge of the animals. How would you survive a zombie apocalypse? Let us know in the comments. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more great content.